Hello and most welcome to 913. We are presently for once indoor, and although I have access to a lovely whiteboard, there do not seem to be any whiteboard pens, which is odd. Well, we'll have to make do without, which is sad. Anyway, this is 913 of the Heidegger series, and I will talk today about some of the side effects, or probably rather main effects, of deconstruction. I've called the lecture Inhabiting Time and Space. By letting time and space flow more into our lives, we can more thoroughly enter the weave of life. We can inhabit and dwell in all aspects of our existence, something that simultaneously makes it possible to enter the radical exogenous, and also so that we inhabit the things we thirst for the most, the real, the giving and knowledge. Once we allow ourselves to enter into the real, even if it has become unusual and different to us as human beings, this will make it possible also for entering and allowing an inner world to glow once more. There is a clear connection, this extended awareness here where I am, going out to the sides, back to Backaplan, forward to the Saluhall, left to Hjalmar Brantingsleden, right going to Björlandavägen, Lidl, the Orient House, and so forth. By seeing these things and preemptively projecting them to reality, it is very important. We always need a ready-made projection coming from ourselves to have a reality. Otherwise, we cannot, as Heidegger so aptly pointed out, we cannot have any understanding without a significant pre-understanding. And where that pre-understanding comes from, it is not from the world. It's the radical other to the world. A radicality that is absolutely necessary to have any objectivity, because objectivity is one of those traits that are lost in the modern world. We are all cut off, living in the simulacrum of Ian McGilchrist, no longer in connection to the real world. And entering into space and allowing that to exist is the first step towards coming to reality once more. It is the very differences and complexities of the real world that makes it real. The simulacrum is not a simulacrum because it's not original. It is not a simulacrum that it lacks some reference to some other stuff. It is not a simulacrum because it does not have the sign of the copy. It is a simulacrum because it is so complicated that it cannot be anything other than reality. That is the reason, according to physics and topology, why something is real. Not because we observe it, not because that it originates in something that we stamp subjectively, emotionally to be reality. That would be a rather happenstance reality that everyone could decide for themselves whatever is real. Well, that is the metaphysics of presence. That is not reality. That is the simulacrum speaking. But compare those two, Susie Froebel and the ideas from quantum mechanics. Things are real because of their complexity level, their organizational level, not because they originate subjectively according to a single person from something that has the stamp of reality or the first cause that makes it real. Oddly, modern man has made the very same thing with God. God has become somehow something that is caused by argument or similar. I put 4 arguments together, like the poor old scholastics that nobody listened to in the Middle Ages, but they seem to be listened to today. And those monstrously simple-minded ideas of proofs of God is the very same thing. It diminishes it to become pure subjectivity in the most negative sense, by a whim, you could say. We need to go back and open up, and we need to come to the time before this trauma happened, way back in antiquity. Somewhere in between the Iliad and Hercules, and before pre-Socratic. Something happened. By opening up, we go back even to before the establishing, the solidification, the cutting of the verbs that work perfectly well for centuries, millennia, and then all of a sudden took an object and subject. And all these measly things with transitivity, intransitivity started, and we got this proxy world and a proxy ego / self. This is also entering into the reality of our own bodies, our own making, coming back to the reality of sensing more. It is opening up to perception. Perception is one of those things that, especially in modern time, has almost disappeared as a thing. We have instead this loop-like closed systems that doesn't allow for any intake whatsoever. And by opening up to space, why not opening up to the twin of space, time? And then we enter another forbidden sector. Now we go behind the iron curtain of absence, the most verboten, forbidden, non-place there is. And while we're inhabiting this most forbidden place of the past, we can grow because we learn and we expand. This is this expansive awareness of where knowledge comes from, and an acquiring directly of knowledge. not this past in terms of cause and effect in a long bead of lines. That is so unreal and so shallow of a make. No, this is the real McCoy, so to speak. Here we find sustenance and we can grow, and this will also inform the other abandoned thing, the other forbidden zone, the zone of the future. This is our true home. The future shows us the path into what will come. Here we gain direction. Here is the place to gain growth, progression. Both are outlawed, both the knowledge of the past and the progression of the future. In Western metaphysics, is only the now allowed. And that is why I like Edmund Husserl, who completely eradicates any idea of now as a moment or a point. Instead, now is the very consciousness of retention and protension. And without futuring as a verb or pasting as a verb, there neither will be consciousness. So you can see how now act in Western metaphysics as a proxy, a sort of ersatz. When there is no pretension, no awareness, we get a lack, we get a feeling of despair and emptiness, and we create this now, and we search it, and we'll be searching it for millennia. Already instigated the moment we were born, the search for presence and existence. But instead of being passive at the theater, the urine comes from the Greek word theater. It shows that observation and understanding became pacified. We're just sitting in our nose, and we shy away from both past and futuring, because futuring and pasting have movement, and now is completely stillborn from the outset. There is no movement at all. Most people today are both lost in the past and the future. They don't find their path, their way in an equal manner. They don't know how they walk, where they walk, and how to orient themselves. Neither in space nor in time. We don't plan anything any longer. Everything is the now. It could be very visible in society. We consume for the moment, and we sit passively trying to be indirectly satisfied by what's going on the telly or the wireless, very far from our own lives. We are no longer masters of our own destiny. We've given up that for the now. So we invested so much into the now, so we cannot give it up anymore. Too many years, too much struggle is being put into the now. Actually, the now is a fearsome coward. It hides in its passivity for both what has happened and the future in form of death. We could see the now as a feared little thing, spending time in the cottage where the grim reaper comes knocking on the door and you ask, who are you? And the Grim Reaper answers, I am death. I've come here to collect you. This is the only take of future for the modern, now obsessed human being. And this is of course also why New Age fails so miserably. It just acquires and lures in the same way for full presence and existence. Just everything is being renamed. It is the same new, made, pastless, non-traditional solution. It just continued the Western world's eternal war against time and space, and against knowledge itself, taking away will, awareness, and everything higher. Instead, my invitation is to become friends with space and time. It takes time. It's like new people that move into the block. We are not used to perception anymore. That's a well-known fact from neurology and science of cognition. We have become dulled down. Just by the idea of the world being outside of us handicaps our perception powers. We do not no longer intently project perception. 3 times as much come out of our perception organs than come back. And if we make a loop of that, just waiting for something to come in, having that incredible misconception, we do harm to the perceptual organs, to the perceptual system. It puts an automatic distance that you are no longer in reality. You are looking at it. In this polarity, things no longer get transferred. There is not a fractal I that enters a fractal radical otherness. It is just the ego that makes its own products of sameness. But we can learn again to project our area, our space, our future. It will feel cumbersome and very odd at the beginning, but it needs to be trained. It doesn't come from just being convinced that the old model doesn't give you anything. That is part, but the other part is train it once more. And there are massive training methods for this. I mentioned training of the memory. That won't work if you still are stuck in the idea that memories are somewhere in the past, long down the line of memories or past action, connected one-dimensionally with past and its past future. Each building a sort of pyramid shape of past and future, with a little pointy edge being the past nows. And they are a succession going all the way back, and in front of you you have the same succession. That's a hampering of this openness of different possibilities that could be possible for you. Just think about what Lakoff and Johnson showed, in different areas of the world, they use different takes on time. Some people say that the future is in the back, whereas the past is in front of you. So all these could be modeled differently. The past is in front of them because you look into the past and you can understand it, whereas the future is behind you. It is still in some sense unknown. Some models are more open, give more modularity and flexibility to the thinking process and your own body. Some are more restricted. But the Western one, especially deviously, because it also connects to our thinking history. And I would say maybe one of the most decisive things that made especially the West go even further into our own cave is, of course, the Industrial Revolution and the Enlightenment period. That sort of accelerated everything. But it is not the start, I would say. I say thank you very much this nice afternoon, and I wish you a very pleasant Thursday. It's actually a bit short. Saw that now. I thought it was longer. Oh, sorry about that. Let me continue for a while. We continue instead. Should have looked at the clock before I started. Oddly enough, nothing happened for a long time. What is important if you take in space, it is that there is actual space. It has actual properties. Don't fall into the mistake and think of space as some kind of homogeneous generality, like the one that Newton constructed out of rice kernels being all equally distant to each other, making up a web for space to sort of have an extension. That doesn't make any sense in topology at all. And it's proven wrong so many times. The first time in the 1850s with non-Euclidean space. Space do not work that way. Space is specific. You cannot imagine space in general. It needs to be your space where you're at. I think this is completely self-evident, but it is not. We need to get used to that we are actually every moment situated in a unique piece of space. And that space has shape, it has colors, it has distances, depths, widths. It is not a coordinate system like the one shown by René Descartes with an origo where you never know what the origo is. Think maybe as a start of yourself as the origo. You are the start of your own existence in space, and therefore you need to put extra attention to the specific details of exactly your reality. I remember when someone said, I encouraged the person to imagine space, and he had not seen the space because it was dark when he got there. He said, I can just imagine space. No, 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 you cannot imagine space. You can, in the end, once you get used to it, always access a sort of spaciousness. But in the beginning, it has to be actual space. Otherwise, you will go directly into the self-confirmatory loop system of the coordinate system. This is actual space we're trying to access, not some generality or universality of space. And of course that goes for time. We are not very good to observing the time anymore. Once we lack our insight into to ourselves, we also lack the insight to how time flows. For instance, I would say 90% would notice that this time of day has this very specific blue-greenish color to it. But if you go to the Yanomami people of Brazil or the Navajo Indians, they were always be keenly aware of that. It is in their language, and they describe it with at least 100, 150 shades. And now we're only talking about afternoon light. In our language we don't have that descriptive power, but there is a good reason for that. We've been ignoring space for such a long time, so we have actually taken away those terms that were built into the verbal system of the Iliad and Trojan War and so forth. And this is of course something that was caused by the jumping directly to the what question, not answering the more importantly why question. And we forgot about the why question, why something exists. Instead we went one step ahead and we got stuck at what are beings? What are their character? The what question doesn't do justice to reality. It actually leads us astray, not in a sane direction. It makes us think that we are not perceptory into reality, that it is a sort of a self-construct out there. But that is something that is not true. It is something caused by the ego and the idea that the ego constructs its own objects. But these are more like tokens that don't have any qualities. They are very close to the rice kernels of Isaac Newton, all looking the same, and they are more like symbols. And then you maybe have a parenthesis beneath the object, and that it says something like stool, lamp, bush, tree, and similar. You put a great distance to your own reality and your own body. This is of course the elevation of consciousness in early antiquity, before the pre-Socratic, into the reflective consciousness that owned its body experience. And we know this was the first period when we lost all these very specific descriptions of how the body worked with intention, and they have different words for different pretensions, going into or futuring, and also pasting. Those were lost, and instead we have this almost coordinate system in the language system of the Greek, which is retained even to this day. Ian McGilchrist points out that the development in the same time period of the definite article had a similar devastating effect on language and this relation with the world, because that in itself assumes or creates, I would say, the generality, the life, the chair. It's no longer specific chair, it's the chairiness in itself. It's not too far to speak about the music, and there's no longer that specific thing you're listening to now. Or the time has lost its specificness as well. Oddly enough, in some grammar book, the definite article is often called a specifier. It's just the very opposite, which is true for many things when it comes to this development in Greek period. I think now we filled our half an hour at least. I say thank you very much, and I wish you a very pleasant afternoon. Bye bye.